Well, there you have the NNPC, the new NNPC GMD, talking about their plan or part of what it intends to do with the NNPC. Well, that's what we're focusing on this morning, and we'll see how much grounds we can cover today. We're joined now by Mr. Israel Aye, who is an energy legal consultant. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, yes, indeed, that's the focus now for the NNPC. The president did say that much. They want to restructure the NNPC. We've seen the new GMD rationalizing some of those directorates, and so far, is that a start? Are we taking the right kind of steps towards ultimately restructuring the NNPC the way it ought to function?
Well, I'm not sure how to approach this now, but I mean, the director, as we're all aware, was very recently appointed.
Yeah.
And as such, he is going to align or realign the organization to deliver the mandate he has received from Mr. President. But again, I should make the point that NNPC is a creation of statute. And if you want to restructure NNPC, fundamentally, what you then need to do is to, in fact, do so from the law. So do I believe that the NNPC can be optimized to deliver to the best of its ability under focused leadership and under focused government? Yes, I do. But I hold the view very firmly that we need to do something rather more fundamental. Otherwise, we will be setting up our good people not to succeed as much as they have the capacity to.
Will they need any adjustment of the law for those directorates that have been rationalized, for instance?
No, I'm not aware. No. The NNPC Act does not prescribe how many directorates you need. You know, so what you call restructuring, I'd rather refer to as optimization. You know, I mean, for example, Mr. President is running the show without ministers at the moment. You know, so, and he can choose, I believe, to rationalize the ministries, as we hear that may happen, to any number of ministries, rather than the ones we are accustomed to seeing. So that's, in a sense, is what you're saying. You know, perhaps just the optimization of the organization to make it lean and mean in keeping with the philosophy of small government of the present regime. That's what I think you're saying.
What would you want to see, because you're playing that sector? What would you want to see, or how would you want to see that sector, or the NNPC, for instance, function in the days ahead?
Well, I mean, what I'd like to, and when I say what I'd like to see is probably what a lot of people would also like to see, quite frankly, is perhaps a rather more fundamental, fundamental restructuring of the industry completely. You know, and that's a journey that we started over 10 years ago. Unfortunately, it has been stalled for whatever kind of reasons. You know, but one truism, if you will, that we can say is that our petroleum industry, both, and when you're talking about the sector, you'll have to think of it in terms of the tripod that it stands on, and that is the law, the institutions, and the people. Is that the law and the institutions have not evolved as well as the industry has evolved, both globally and, in fact, locally. So if you take NNPC, for example, it has been accused of all kinds of misdeeds and mismanagement in recent past, and I do not feel the I do not take the liberty to pass any kind of a judgment or state an opinion on that. But the question then you will ask is, why are the sort of things we have heard even possible? Why wasn't it possible for an institution to check it? Yeah? Therefore, it brings us to the issue of institutional reform within the context of the petroleum industry reforms. And by the way, the literature exists. If you look at the OGIC report, which was supposed to be the foundation for the famous PIB, a lot of those things were set out and discussed, and we're talking about an independent regulator, you know, similar to what we have with the communications sector and power.
Okay.
You know,
that's having
NERC and the NCC not beholden to the minister, you know, and that can independently regulate the industry. You know, to date, NNPC does perform a bit of those sort of functions. NNPC largely acts as the back office to the Minister for Policy initiation and articulation. Again, I believe that may distract it, and so some people have suggested, understandably, that perhaps you should create a directorate, you know, that with some perpetual succession that would act as the back office for policy initiation and articulation that will support the minister or whoever is responsible for governance in the petroleum industry. And that will be a professional workforce, you know, possibly remunerated differently from the usual civil service. And so that will provide some sort of continuity of policy. Yeah. And then NNPC then will focus as a commercial entity, similar to Petrobras, Petronas, Statoil, and the likes. You know, now whether it chooses to develop as a producing entity or indeed as an investment entity is then another decision we'll have to make going forward. So, and I think elements of this were definitely present in His Excellency, the Governor of Kaduna State. I think when he gave a presentation, I'm trying to remember the forum, a few weeks ago, and what we would hope that this government would seize the moment, capitalize on the goodwill it enjoys to be able to push through these kinds of reforms.
We're seizing the moment here. The cry out there is for a total unbundling, the same way power sector was like unbundled, PATM was unbundled into different discos and all of that. They're also asking for a total unbundling of the NNPC so that some of those directorates become like companies of their own and they can run independent. That would boil down to the issue of legislation. But if you weigh that as against the optimization and how long it would take, how do you think it should go?
Well, I mean, unbundling, that's an interesting term, hearing it for the first time, to be honest. You know, and but again, you're absolutely right when you say that whether it is unbundling, restructuring, whatsoever term you use, you need to underpin it by the appropriate legislation. The unbundling of NNPC, as you're aware, is supported by the law until the NEPA Act was repealed and replaced by the IPSRA, which is the Electricity Power Sector Reforms Act. It wasn't possible to do any such thing. You know, so that's probably what we're talking about. Whether it is the PIB or perhaps, and you know, I'm one of those persons who believe that we are at the point where it is impossible not to pass the PIB.